The Necklace by Guy de Maupassant. She was one of those pretty, delightful girls who, apparently by some error of fate, get themselves born the daughters of very minor civil servants. She had no dowry, no expectations, no means of meeting some rich, important man who would understand, love, and marry her. So she went along with a proposal made by a junior clerk in the Ministry of Education. She dressed simply, being unable to afford anything better, but she was every whit as unhappy as any daughter of good family who has come down in the world. Women have neither rank nor class, and their beauty, grace, and charm do service for birthright and connections. Natural guile, instinctive elegance, and adaptability are what determine their place in the hierarchy, and a girl of no birth to speak of may easily be the equal of any society lady. She was unhappy all the time, for she felt that she was intended for a life of refinement and luxury. She was made unhappy by the run-down apartment they lived in, the peeling walls, the battered chairs, and the ugly curtains. Now all this, which any other woman of her station might never even have noticed, was torture to her and made her very angry. The spectacle of the young Breton peasant girl who did the household chores stirred sad regrets and impossible fancies. She dreamed of silent antechambers hung with oriental tapestries, lit by tall, bronze candelabras, and of two tall footmen in liveried breeches asleep in the huge armchairs, dozing in the heavy heat of a stove. She dreamed of great drawing rooms dressed with old silk, filled with fine furniture which showed off trinkets beyond price, and of pretty little parlors, filled with perfumes and just made for intimate talk at 5 in the afternoon with one's closest friends who would be the most famous and sought-after men of the day whose attentions were much coveted and desired by all women. When she sat down to dinner at the round table spread with a 3-day-old cloth, facing her husband who always lifted the lid of the soup tureen and declared delightedly, "Ah! Stew. Splendid. There's nothing I like better than a nice stew." She dreamed of elegant dinners, gleaming silverware, and tapestries which peopled the walls with mythical characters and strange birds in enchanted forests. She dreamed of exquisite dishes served on fabulous china plates, of pretty compliments whispered into willing ears and received with sphinx-like smiles over the pink flesh of a trout or the wings of a hazel hen. She had no fine dresses, no jewelry, nothing. And that was all she cared about. She felt that God had made her for such things. She would have given anything to be popular, envied, attractive, and in demand. She had a friend who was rich, a friend from her convent days, on whom she never called now, for she was always so unhappy afterwards. Sometimes, for days on end, she would weep tears of sorrow, regret, despair, and anguish. One evening her husband came home looking highly pleased with himself. In his hand he brandished a large envelope. "Look," he said, "I've got something for you." She tore the paper flap eagerly and extracted a printed card bearing these words. "The Minister of Education and Madame Georges Ramponneau request the pleasure of the company of Monsieur and Madame Loisel at the Ministry buildings on the evening of the 18th of January. Instead of being delighted as her husband had hoped, she tossed the invitation peevishly onto the table and muttered, "What earthly use is that to me? But, darling, I thought you'd be happy. You never go anywhere and it's an opportunity, a splendid opportunity. I had the dickens of a job getting hold of an invite. Everybody's after them. They're very much in demand and not many are handed out to us clerks. You'll be able to see all the big knobs there." She looked at him irritably and said shortly, "And what am I supposed to wear if I do go?" He had not thought of that. He blustered, "What about the dress you wear for the theater? It looks all right to me." The words died in his throat. He was totally disconcerted and dismayed by the sight of his wife who had begun to cry. 2 large tears rolled slowly out of the corners of her eyes and down towards the sides of her mouth. "What's up?" he stammered. "What's the matter?" Making a supreme effort, she controlled her sorrows and, wiping her damp cheeks, replied quite calmly, "Nothing. It's just that I haven't got anything to wear and consequently shan't be going to any reception. Give the invite to one of your colleagues with a wife who is better off for clothes than I am." He was devastated. He went on, "Oh come on, Matilda. Look, What could it cost to get something suitable that would do for other occasions, something fairly simple? She thought for a few moments, working out her sums but also wondering how much she could decently ask for without drawing an immediate refusal and pained protests from her husband who was careful with his money. Finally, after some hesitation, she said, I can't say precisely, but dare say I could get by on 400 francs. He turned slightly pale, for he had been setting aside just that amount to buy a gun and finance hunting trips the following summer in the flat landscape around Nanterre with a few friends who went shooting larks there on Sundays. But he said, very well. I'll give you your 400 francs. But do try and get a decent dress. The day of the reception drew near and Madame Loisel appeared sad, worried, anxious. Yet all her clothes were ready. One evening her husband said, What's up? You haven't half been acting funny these last few days. She replied, It vexes me that I haven't got a single piece of jewelry, not one stone, that I can put on. I'll look like a church mouse. I'd almost as soon not go to the reception. Wear a posy, he said. It's all the rage this year. You could get 2 or 3 magnificent roses for 10 francs. She was not convinced. No, there's nothing so humiliating as to look poor when you're with women who are rich. But her husband exclaimed, You aren't half silly. Look, go and see your friend, Madame Forestier, and ask her to lend you some jewelry. You know her well enough for that. She gave a delighted cry. You're right. I never thought of that. The next day she called on her friend and told her all about her problem. Madame Forestier went over to a mirror-fronted wardrobe, took out a large casket, brought it over, unlocked it, and said to Madame Loisel, Choose whatever you like. At first she saw bracelets, then a rope of pearls and a Venetian cross made of gold and diamonds admirably fashioned. She tried on the necklaces in the mirror, and could hardly bear to take them off and give them back. She kept asking, Have you got anything else? Yes, of course. Just look. I can't say what sort of thing you'll like best. Allophacidon, in a black satinwood case, she found a magnificent diamond necklace, and her heart began to beat with a moderate desire. Her hands shook as she picked it up. She fastened it around her throat over her high-necked dress and sat looking at herself in rapture. Then, diffidently, apprehensively, she asked, Can you lend me this? Nothing else. Just this. But of course. She threw her arms around her friend, kissed her extravagantly, and then ran home, taking her treasure with her. The day of the reception arrived. Madame Loisel was a success. She was the prettiest woman there, elegant, graceful, radiant, and wonderfully happy. All the men looked at her, inquired who she was, and asked to be introduced. All the cabinet secretaries and under-secretaries wanted to waltz with her. She was even noticed by the minister himself. She danced ecstatically, wildly, intoxicated with pleasure, giving no thought to anything else, swept along on her victorious beauty and glorious success, and floating on a cloud of happiness composed of the homage, admiration, and desire she evoked and the kind of complete and utter triumph which is so sweet to a woman's heart. She left at about 4 in the morning. Since midnight her husband had been dozing in a small, empty side room with 3 other men whose wives were having an enjoyable time. He helped her on with her coat which he had fetched when it was time to go, a modest, everyday coat, a commonplace coat violently at odds with the elegance of her dress. It brought her down to earth, and she would have preferred to slip away quietly and avoid being noticed by the other women who were being arrayed in rich furs. But Loisel grabbed her by the arm. Wait a sec. You'll catch cold outside. I'll go and get a cab. But she refused to listen and ran quickly down the stairs. When they were outside in the street, there was no cab in sight. They began looking for one, hailing all the cabbies they saw driving by in the distance. They walked down to the Seine in desperation, shivering with cold. There, on the embankment, they at last found one of those aged nocturnal hackney cabs which only emerge in Paris after dusk, as if ashamed to parade their poverty in the full light of day. It bore them back to their front door in the Rue des Martyrs, and they walked sadly up to their apartment. For her it was all over, while he was thinking that he would have to be at the ministry at 10. Standing in front of the mirror, she took off the coat she had been wearing over her shoulders, to get a last look at herself in all her glory. Suddenly she gave a cry. The necklace was no longer round her throat. Her husband, who was already half undressed, asked, "What's up?" She turned to him in a panic. I, Madame Forestier's necklace. I haven't got it." He straightened up as if thunderstruck. "What? But, you can't have lost it." They looked in the pleats of her dress, in the folds of her coat, and in her pockets. They looked everywhere. They did not find it. "Are you sure you still had it when you left the ballroom?" he asked. "Yes, remember fingering it in the entrance hall. But if you'd lost it in the street, we'd have heard it fall. So it must be in the cab." "That's right. That's probably it. Did you get his number?" "No. Did you happen to notice it?" "No." They looked at each other in dismay. Finally Loisel got dressed again. "I'm going to go back the way we came," he said, "to see if I can find it." He went out. She remained as she was, still wearing her evening gown, not having the strength to go to bed, sitting disconsolately on a chair by the empty grate, her mind a blank. Her husband returned at about 7 o'clock. He had found nothing. He went to the police station, called at newspaper offices where he advertised a reward, toured the cab companies, and tried anywhere where the faintest of hopes led him. She waited for him all day long in the same distracted condition, thinking of the appalling catastrophe which had befallen them. Loisel came back that evening, hollow-cheeked and very pale. He had not come up with anything. "Look," he said, "you'll have to write to your friend and say you broke the catch on her necklace and you are getting it repaired. That'll give us time to work out what we'll have to do." She wrote to his dictation. A week later they had lost all hope. Loisel, who had aged 5 years, said, "We'll have to start thinking about replacing the necklace." The next day they took the case in which it had come and called on the jeweler whose name was inside. He looked through his order book. "It wasn't me that sold the actual necklace. I only supplied the case." After this, they trailed round jewelers' shops, looking for a necklace just like the other one, trying to remember it, and both ill with worry and anxiety. In a shop in the Palais Royal they found a diamond collar which they thought was identical to the one they were looking for. It cost 40,000 francs. The jeweler was prepared to let them have it for 36. They asked him not to sell it for 3 days. And they got him to agree to take it back for 34,000 if the one that had been lost turned up before the end of February. Loisel had 18,000 francs which his father had left him. He would have to borrow the rest. He borrowed the money, 1,000 francs here, 500 there, sometimes 100 and as little as 60. He signed notes, agreed to pay exorbitant rates of interest, resorted to usurers and the whole tribe of moneylenders. He mortgaged the rest of his life, signed papers without knowing if he would ever be able to honor his commitments, and then, sick with worry about the future, the grim poverty which stood ready to pounce, and the prospect of all the physical privation and mental torture ahead, he went round to the jewelers to get the new necklace with the 36,000 francs which he put on the counter. When Madame Loisel took it round, Madame Forestier said in a huff, "You ought really to have brought it back sooner. Might have needed it." She did not open the case, as her friend had feared she might. If she had noticed the substitution, what would she have thought? What would she have said? Would she not have concluded she was a thief? Then began for Madame Loisel the grindingly horrible life of the very poor, but quickly and heroically, she resigned herself to what she could not alter. Their appalling debt would have to be repaid. She was determined to pay. They dismissed the maid. They moved out of their apartment and rented an attic room. She became used to heavy domestic work and all kinds of ghastly kitchen chores. She washed dishes, wearing down her pink nails on the greasy pots and saucepans. She washed the dirty sheets, shirts, and floorcloths by hand and hung them up to dry on a line. Each morning she took the rubbish down to the street and carried the water up, pausing for breath on each landing. And, dressed like any working-class woman, she shopped at the fruiterers', the grocers', and the butchers', with a basket over her arm, haggling, frequently abused and always counting every penny. Each month they had to settle some accounts, renew others, and bargain for time. Her husband worked in the evenings doing accounts for a shopkeeper and quite frequently sat up into the early hours doing copying work at 5 sous a page. They lived like this for 10 years. By the time 10 years had gone by, they had repaid everything, with not a penny outstanding, in spite of the extortionate conditions and including the accumulated interest. Madame Loisel looked old now. She had turned into the battling, hard, uncouth housewife who rules working-class homes. Her hair was untidy, her skirts were askew, and her hands were red. She spoke in a gruff voice and scrubbed floors on her hands and knees. But sometimes, when her husband had gone to the office, she would sit by the window and think of that evening long ago when she had been so beautiful and so admired. What might not have happened had she not lost the necklace? Who could tell? Who could possibly tell? Life is so strange, so fickle. How little is needed to make or break us. One Sunday, needing a break from her heavy working week, she went out for a stroll on the Champs-Élysées. Suddenly she caught sight of a woman pushing a child in a pram. It was Madame Forestier, still young, still beautiful, and still attractive. Madame Loisel felt apprehensive. Should she speak to her? Yes, why not? Now that she had paid in full, she would tell her everything. Why not? She went up to her. Hello, Jean. The friend did not recognize her and was taken aback at being addressed so familiarly by a common woman in the street. She stammered. But, I'm sorry. Don't know. There's some mistake. No mistake. I'm Matilda Loisel. Her friend gave a cry. But my poor Matilda, how you've changed. Yes, I've been through some hard times since I saw you, very hard times. And it was all on your account. On my account. Whatever do you mean? Do you remember that diamond necklace you lent me to go to the reception at the ministry? Yes. What about it? Well, I lost it, but you returned it to me. No, I returned another one just like it. And we've been paying for it these past 10 years. You know, it wasn't easy for us. We had nothing. But it's over and done with now, and I'm glad. Madame Forestier stopped. You mean you bought a diamond necklace to replace mine? Yes. And you never noticed the difference, did you? They were exactly alike, and she smiled a proud, innocent smile. Madame Forestier looked very upset and, taking both her hands in hers, said, "Oh, my poor Matilda. But it was only an imitation necklace. It couldn't have been worth much more than 500 francs. Taken from Macroft Copyright Encarta Registered Reference Library 2008.